Tell me why ain't nothing but a... Oh, sorry, you just caught me listening to my new favorite song, Tell Me 13 Reasons Why, featuring real voice cuts from the Netflix show. I'm obviously kidding about that, but let's say we take the classic hit song Tell Me Why by the Backstreet Boys and subtract that from the terrible version I just made. And what do you have left? 13. Episode 13. Daily Nourishment. That might be one of the worst intros we've ever done to date, but that's exactly what you're here for. So, what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about, does consuming food change you as an individual? Now, this is a little bit of an odd topic, but it comes from the idea that consuming a certain type of media changes an individual in ways that, is different for every person. And I want to specifically talk about this because I just finished watching The Truman Show, which, for those of you that don't know, The Truman Show is basically a movie about a guy whose life is televised everywhere. And the catch is he doesn't know, right? So his life is a TV show and he doesn't know. He's the main character, right? And it talks about him basically slowly discovering that he is like how his situation is. And then eventually him leaving this show. Oh, sorry. Probably should have said something about spoilers. Sorry. But basically he leaves the show and he then discovers the real world, right? And it leaves you at that end, right? And I think this movie has such a great effect because I think everyone after watching it gets a little bit of like the irks, right? You look at everything a little differently. You maybe look at something and think like, wait, is that a camera watching over there? And what this movie did so great is because this came out in 1990. It actually predicted a lot of the things that happen now, right? Like think about all the things that could potentially be watching you at all times. A little bit spooky when you actually think about it, right? But I think that movie really does change people. And I wanted to think like, can this idea extend to food as well? Can you serve someone a piece of food and like really change their outlook on something? And I'm going to go with yes. I think you can. But I wanted to break this down through multiple different ideas. So I wanted to break this down basically under four views, right? What kind of effect would this have? Like, can you do this to a diner versus to a chef, right? Because a chef has tried a whole wide array of stuff. So can you still kind of leave like a super lasting impact on them? So we're going to start with the diner first. So I think with a diner, for sure, you can have something that will tremendously impact them, right? I think once someone has a taste for like they try something like really luxurious, that has a big impact on them. I think like trying caviar for the first time, just like tasting like it's really, when you get to those really unique ingredients, they become really unique because I find they're really hard to describe. The way I describe caviar is like the freshest seawater possible. Now, how's that? The freshest seawater possible? Someone who's never had it is not going to understand at all. But if you've had caviar before, you'll go like, I know exactly what he's talking about. It has that just ever consuming, that incredible texture, that like brightness, that creaminess, which you can't even, there's no cream in the ocean. How would the creaminess come through? But it has an incredible taste and it's really hard to describe. And I think once you have caviar for the first time, it kind of opens your mind up for like what is fully possible texturally. It doesn't even have to be caviar, really. Anything that has like a really unique texture kind of can fully open your mind as to what is possible texturally and what can you expect from food texturally. I think for that kind of thing, it can also apply to a chef. But when it happens to a chef, they actually start thinking about it more practically. They go like, whoa, I've never thought of that before. How can I use that in my cooking? Right? I think regardless of what kind of field they're in, because it's like when you have caviar, sticking with this example, you can really like, it's the most fresh taste you can ever have. And I think in whatever cooking you do, you're then going to see, is there some way I can give my diners the freshest possible taste of whatever you're serving to them, even if it's something that's not traditionally fresh. Something like a dish like collard greens, a lot of its beauty comes from the really complex layered flavors. But what if after having caviar, you wonder, is there a way of just giving that as a really fresh presentation, a complete new look on this once classical dish? I think that's something that would definitely have a lot of impact. And the other thing that I've been thinking about as well is, can you have something that you serve to someone that has the same impact the first time that it does multiple times? Or is there something that has to be served multiple times before they really get it? I think that is definitely the case. I think a truffle is a great example. I think the first time you have truffle, right? You might be a little underwhelmed depending on the presentation because a truffle is really something that's about the aromatics. I think if you're not looking for that, I think if you're purely looking for a taste or the first time you have it is like one of those terrible synthetic truffle oils, then you're not really going to get it. But I think like if you hold a truffle and you smell it and it just like you don't know how to describe this thing. It is indescribable. And that I think is the beauty. And that I think honestly what drives these ingredients to be so expensive. Because who is paying this exorbitant price for something they can describe? I think that's the same thing about an experience. You don't pay a whole lot of money for an experience that you can easily describe. Skydiving, yeah, you fell out of a plane, but it's so much more than that. That's why people pay for it. They pay for the adrenaline rush. They pay for the journey, the fear right when they're stepping on the edge of a plane, and then that full feeling of freedom. And I think that ultimate feeling of flight that humans have always dreamed of because they've never been able to achieve it. So I think having something multiple times, I think there will be a certain time, and it can be on your first time, but I think there's a lot of things that you have to try multiple times, and then eventually it will click. Like for me personally, cheese has never clicked. I am a big hater of cheese, but I think one time when I have it, it will click. I think there's a great quote which goes, "The million and first time you hear it, that's when it really sets in," right? And that's basically a thing about how it might not be at the right point in your life, but really good advice does apply to everyone. It just depends on the point in life you're in. So I want to know, what do you think about this idea of food really affecting you in a certain way, like a movie or a book is, right? I want to know, is there a certain food that has affected you or that you've served and you've seen it affect someone? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And I promise I won't do another musical jingle for at least another, give or take 10 episodes. Goodbye.